Okay, so we are going to move forward. Welcome everybody. Thanks for attending this webinar. My name is Ariel Bosch. I am Vice President of the Argentina-Texas Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber is a non-profit, volunteer, and independent organization established in 2016 to foster the commercial relationship between Texas, the ninth largest economy in the world, and Argentina, the third largest economy of Latin America. We have chapters in Houston, Dallas, and Austin in Texas, and Neuquén and Buenos Aires in Argentina. Also, we have 5 business sector committees: energy and engineering, health, food and beverage, real estate, and innovation and technology. This webinar is part of the 2022 program. The program includes trainings and webinars, pitch events, business round, trade missions, and networking events. Our membership is growing, and I would like to invite you to become part of the chambers. I would like to recognize our sponsor, Globant, that is an important member of the chambers, and it is giving us the opportunity to hear this and attending this webinar. I am happy to have here Kitrik and Santiago with us today. Thanks a lot for sharing your knowledge and time with us. We are sure that everybody will enjoy this presentation. Kitrik, please go ahead.
Thank you. 1 second. Okay. Welcome to our webinar on digital sobriety and developing sustainable software. We're brought to you again by the Argentina-Texas Chamber of Commerce and Globant. Globant's a digitally native company that helps organizations reinvent themselves to create a way forward and unleash their potential. We're the place where innovation, design, and engineering meet at scale. I'm Kitrik Kearns, your host and a client partner with Globant. With me is Santiago Fontanarosa, our VP of Technology from our Sustainable Business Studio. Santi, please say hello.
Hi, hello guys. Thank you, Kitrik. So as Kitrik mentioned, working in Globant from Argentina, and happy to be here and take this opportunity to introduce new approach we are seeing.
That's great. Thank you, Santi. We've got a fairly tight agenda today. We'll start with an introduction to Globant. We'll walk through the key topics we're discussing today, or the key topic we're discussing today, digital sobriety. Then we'll review what Globant is doing to help. Then we'll have a short Q&A session to answer your questions. If you'd be so kind, please feel free to submit your questions you have during the presentation in the chat window. And when we get to the Q&A session, we'll read them off and answer them for you. We want to make sure to just answer them during the Q&A period, please. Thank you. Again, we're Globant. You may not know us, but we work with many of the world's most recognized brands. We began in Latin America in 2003 in Buenos Aires, and we went public on the New York Stock Exchange in 2014 and continue to grow at a rapid pace. Next year, we'll be 20 years old. What makes us unique is our culture, which we're very proud of. We are native digital and native agile with a very flat structure that allows us to move quickly. Our native agility has led to a very accelerated progression of capabilities. We began with reinventing technology services, then experiences, and AI in business, and now we're pushing really hard with markets and industries. An example of this is our current efforts focusing on helping the energy sector with its energy transition challenges. So Santi, let's start from the beginning and talk about the importance of a carbon footprint. What is it and why is it so important?
So not sure everyone is aware, but we define the carbon footprint as the total greenhouse emissions that are produced by either individuals, organizations, or the action or producing services and goods. Climate change has been around for a long time, but since COVID-19, we have started paying more and more attention to this present topic. And the carbon footprint is the main driver for the climate change or the increase in temperature. So we are today we are not going to talk specifically about the carbon footprint per se in general, so everyone is still looking for that, apologize for that. But yes, we are going to see like a derivate, a side effect of technology and how we relate to this. And it's very important to mention these. Someone may say, that's for hippies, that's for Greenpeace, that's something that we don't consider about it. And no offense, but we have seen a change in a way doing business going forward. And nowadays, sustainability and business or revenue generation are no longer a contradictory idea. We are seeing that more and more companies are introducing sustainability and in particular the carbon management footprint into the core strategy. And when we see someone like Larry Fink, CEO of one of the most well-known founding, expressing this idea, we are sure that we're on the right path. And that's something that we need to address.
So Santi, we know COVID-19 accelerated digital transformation plans for many businesses, where a 5 to 10 year horizon is turned into now, basically. Is there any impact from this accelerated focus on digital transformation?
Yeah, as you were mentioned, since COVID-19, many plans about 5 to 10 years ahead become now. And it was about either transform or die on the business arena. But when we talk about technology, technology consumes energy, electric energy, right? And the intensity of that energy has an impact on the environment. So basically the CO2 that is released. So we start seeing this concept of digital carbon footprint, which we can relate to the amount of CO2 that is emitted to the environment through the use of technology, right? And even though it's maybe a new concept to be introduced, when we go further in the presentation, we will see there is a direct correlation, and it's actually that makes sense to start looking at as a separate issue to be tracked. So you have to put some numbers around this, right? Because we can say which is actually the effort that we need. We are talking about there's over 4 billion people that are active in the internet, right? Every time that we go to the page or Google search, or we do Netflix or HBO, wherever we choose, we are active users. And the internet is contributing to the annual emissions over 3.7%. And we can say, well, it's not that much, right? Because it's over 3%. But if we compare to the airline industry, they are similar. So we are talking about huge impact. And when we're talking about CO2, it's hard to measure, which is the carbon footprint concept of me sending an email or even sending a WhatsApp message. Well, we use electric energy as a proxy to determine these emissions, because if we can determine the amount of energy of this action requires, and then we translate to the required carbon intensity to generate that electricity, we can have a direct correlation about this. And so to give you an idea of why it is important, and this burn is not going away, on the contrary, it's going to be faster and faster. If we calculate the total energy consumption of the IT world as a whole, right, over the world, and we compare to a country, it will rank number 3 after China and the US. So you can have a grasp of the dimension of the energy consumption from the IT technology world. So, but it's not all about bad news. So that's the important thing about, if we can measure that energy, right? And we can measure which are the impact that we can do and how we can reduce it. And this comes from an example of a guy that published this and said, if I modify my web page that is loading, so it's actively used by 2 million people monthly, and that change is very small. We are talking about one single kilobyte file. So it's basically, to put it in a way, to reduce a line, to delete a line on the source code, it will save an estimate of over 3 million tons, right, of CO2 per month. Sorry, 3 tons per month is annually there. So what does it mean is a number again, but what is important about the numbers is to give some context about it. So it's the same amount of CO2 emitted going to Amsterdam, New York, going back and forth with plane, or driving a Toyota Yaris, which is a pretty much big car, for over 1160 miles. So what is important about this example and the numbers is that from the technology point of view, we have a responsibility because we are making an impact on this, but at the same time, we have a great opportunity because with very less effort, we can have a multiplying effect. And if we're talking about this, that is a web page, but we're talking about, let's say we can improve the Netflix application. We are hitting millions and millions of subscribers. So this is a butterfly effect that we are going to discuss. So we can say, okay, you are trying to present this, but who else is really looking at this as a problem? So early last year, Microsoft, GitHub, and other companies, Global itself, joined and founded the Green Software Foundation, which their main objective is to establish standards and tools that help address the digital carbon footprint. And when we see these companies that actually are the main players being aware of this, it's something that is important to come into play. And what is more important to mention is about, when we talk about carbon footprint, companies tend to compensate. What that means is, okay, I'm going to emit this amount of CO2 on the atmosphere, but in some place, I will pay to capture that CO2, either to rainforest or carbon bond or allows to be emitted, right? So, but what is important to mention is that CO2 is already emitted to the atmosphere. So the damage is already done. But when we talk about software, we have the opportunity to not making that emission into there. So it's actually a really true benefit impact on that. And so the Green Software Foundation, which is a non-profit, and Global is part of that, and many companies, and I invite you to also join and review that. It's the, let's say, legitimation, be legit about this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and it's important. Not just because we are caring about the planet, but as we're going to see this, we have opportunity on saving costs, operational costs at the same time we do this.
So Sanji, that's great. So let's get to the root of the topic here. So what is digital sobriety?
Joe, it's a very good question. So we have been talking about the what, right? But what about how we do it? Which is the approach we can follow. So digital sobriety is an approach that is designing linear services and curbing everyday digital use. In a nutshell, we need to make our software or digital product consume less energy. This is an idea that emerged from the Shift project, which is a think tank from France. And I don't know how many of you are actually have been programming or have been into technology, but I can see that over time, the hardware can become cheaper. Nowadays, just to scale up my infrastructure is just one credit away. I don't need to buy hardware. I don't need to contact. I just need to put my credit card in Amazon, do 2 clicks, and boom. So I no longer have to care about that. And that makes that all digital products become more eager for resources. So this is preaching to go back to roots and say, okay, let's go use all resources in a more efficient way. And not only because this is going to be good for the environment, but it's also good for the final user. And also for the amount of resources we can save. So And this framework is based on four pillars, four important pillars. One is the code, the algorithm, that's the actual code that we produce. Then we have the infra, then we have data, and the user experience there. And we are going to see some examples of actually real tactical actions that we can do, because it's not just a theoretical aspect of this. There's actually, that we can say it like recipes that we can apply. So when we talk about code, we are talking about the algorithms, the instruction that we need to give to something happen, right? So that's kind of a complexity. The more tasks I need to do, the more complex it becomes. But the more complex, the more CPU and memory intensity that I'm going to use. And that implies directly more energy consumption. So if I can simplify, reuse code, and be more efficient in that, that's a first direct impact and a first element of optimization. Then the programming language, the tool that we want to use to program. And this may come as a surprise. Not all the programming languages are energy efficient as the same. We know JavaScript that is interpreted close to C, C++. So we need to do the right choice about this and try to make it the energy efficiency as an additional KPI that we need to have in mind when we choose to go to a project. I'm not saying that it's the only dimension that we need to care about, because we have quality engineering, we have security, we have client restriction, but also we need to introduce this as a factor of decision. And then the frameworks. Not all the frameworks are lean enough. There are some framework is a set of tools, right, that we use. So you can think about going to the hardware store and buy, I don't know, just in case, as many tools as you need, when you only need a hammer to put a nail on the wall, right? So the same for the frameworks. We need to be frugal about it. Just make the right decisions to make it small and to make it efficient. So in a nutshell, when I talk about code, I'm talking to be more aware of the algorithm that we are going to choose. Then we go to the infra. Back in the days, not so long ago, infrastructure was about going to the big player like IBM and buy this very expensive piece of hardware that you need to configure and to manage and to maintain and to put it in your data center, right? But along come the way, come Amazon, and it completely changed everything. Then you go Google, and also we have Microsoft, right? The cloud, the famous cloud that we all well know. And the important thing about the cloud is that you have many options. You can, let's say, reserve a full instance, a full server for yourself, or you can ask just to pay on demand. So, you know, I may have an increase of user because I have Black Friday around the corner. But with that, we also came like, you know what? Let's go to reserve just in case, because no one wants to get fired because on Black Friday, your e-commerce go down, right? So just in case, I will spend more money. But again, we start losing sight of what is important. So there are some techniques like right sizing and downsizing. And on the scale, right sizing is, I need a really big instance, or can use at 20% of use, or can I use a medium instance at 60%? Can I just keep one server, and when it came and the number of users increase, I can automatically ask for more? Yes. Also, the region I choose, I don't know you are fully aware, but the cloud is separated in different regions, even in the States, Europe, Asia, sorry. So, and these data centers, because of the end, they're data center there, they're actually hardware. We can choose that the ones that are more green, that are using more green energy, either generated by wind, or by, let's say, solar. And that's important because we can configure that and reduce the workload. The beauty about this is we don't need to complete all the workload on 9 to 7. Maybe we can do it over the night. Maybe we can shift to another region that have less workload. So that will keep our servers down to a certain degree of percentage, and will reduce the consumption of energy. And not also this, and we are going to see on the further presentation, that we can save actually money on this configuration as well. So data, what I keep data separate. Nowadays, to store and to generate data is the new oil. You have heard that, right? And actually, it's pretty much, I would say, simple to generate, to storage that data. We generate data from many sources: social media, emails, messages, even documents. And that's the amount of data that is being generated and continue growing and growing. No one is caring about, okay, I really need to keep this for forever. Because the data, even though it's in the cloud, in the end, it goes to a hard drive and need to be storage. And we came again, by surprise, it consumes energy, right? So what we need to do is start having policies about how longer we are going to maintain that data. We need to be compliant also with private data. We have to have in mind which is the life cycle of that data. I actually need to keep, I don't know, if I'm using Twitter to generate some training for my machine learning algorithm, I really need to keep all the training data, or once I get the model, I can throw away. So again, some daily decision that we can make it to get improvement on this. Yeah, sorry, I was looking, the next one is, and finally, but not least, sorry, didn't change. I don't know if change the presentation. Experience, we go to experience.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry for that. So experience, when we're talking about experience, we are talking about, let's say, the closer to the user. And you are all aware about the dark mode, right? Nowadays, when we have certain amount of the day, they change my screen, change from white to dark, to black. So the dark mode, it's consume less energy because it needs to power less LEDs, right? Point of light on my screen. But also, I can choose wisely the web typography, because you know, every time that you access a web page, it downloads information. That information goes through the wire and go to that center. So the amount of data that needs to be transferred, it also consumes energy. So I can choose to reduce images, I can reduce the type, but it's not only about to become reduced and going back to the 90s with that really ugly websites. I'm not saying that, but let's talk about an e-commerce. Let's say about a checkout process on an e-commerce. I really do need to have like 5 steps. So each or different forms. Can I reduce that? Can I make my user experience more compact? Which is also a good thing, because I'm going to keep retention of clients. So as I said before, it's not just about getting smaller, probably, to put it bluntly, but it's also think new ways to make the same process more effective, and having in mind this energy consumption. And by this, I'm not saying that we are not going to see continuous in Netflix. I'm not saying that we are not continuous sending emails or sending videos. What I'm saying is we need to start making more informed decisions when we make digital products. As we already are incorporating, no one nowadays think about releasing a software product without going through QA or going through a security audit. Well, it's the same. We are now incorporating sustainability on this part of the process.
So thank you, Santi, for walking us through these very tactical examples. So specifically, how's Globant helping companies with these challenges today?
We are a software company, as a service company, right? So we have a responsibility, as I mentioned before, with very quick sample, very with very few effort, we can have a multiplier effect on other clients that we are helping them, and then by their clients going forward. So this is an example of the largest American multinational sport channel. I cannot mention because of NDA restriction, but you can think about it when you see Super Bowl. It has around 20 million subscribers. So you are thinking about 20 million people at some point seeing and consuming video through this app or a web page. So we conduct an analysis with them, and we basically audit the whole application. And what is important, we find out that if we can reduce the size of the web page by 20%, which is only 10 megabytes, it's not, to be honest, it's not a big deal. It's very simple to apply. We can generate an average of 500 tons CO2 annually, right? That's only for one domain. So only for one page. So you will go to a URL, thiscompany.com, but they are global. So they have many, many other websites. So they have huge infrastructure around that. And they were emitting like almost 10 grams of CO2, which is not a big number, but when we multiply by 20 million people doing this, it's huge. And also, along the process, we find out that they were using, let's say, not in an optimal way, their server configuration. They have instances on the cloud that at the, let's say, the stress point, they were consuming, I would say, 30 to 40% only of that server. So basically the server was not even moving. So the CPU was not being utilized. And we make this. So if you reduce and you move from as EC2 as a naming convention for Amazon, which is basically like a huge server that you can use, and you reduce that to a large to a medium, only for one instance or only one, for one server, you can save almost $50,000 annually. And that's only for one server, for one application. You can do the math, right? So this was a small proof of concept that we applied to this client. We continue working with this client, actually with, let's say, it's a big conglomerate. So we are planning to expand to other business units inside them. But you can see the potential of this. You can see the potential on the environment, which also align with the reason we choose this company. They have a net zero commitment. By 2030, they need to reduce all the carbon emission for them. They want to be carbon neutral, either compensating or reducing. So being a media company, you can think about that streaming is a huge part of that commitment. So this is very aligned, and this, in a way, helping them reach that net zero commitment without investing further money in other projects, so avoid compensating, but at the same time, really making them more optimal in their operation daily basis. As you see there, if we optimize the infrastructure, they're paying for this project by actually without money to put it away. So less spending, we already pay for this. So in global, how we apply this, as we mentioned, aside from this real case example, I was the one that conducted that example last year, so it's very new. So we are separated in studios. Each studio is an area of expertise. You can think on a studio about a guild. So we have the guild of DevOps or infrastructure. We have the front-end developer, the mobile developer, the back-end developer, data specialist, data science and stuff. So as I mentioned along the presentation, to be honest, this is not new. There's not new techniques around the way. It's just to take techniques that we already know and reapply with different approach. When we talk about memory profiling, to be honest, have been around for almost 40 years, because in the past, memory was scarce. So we are taking that and apply. So we are re-skilling our engineers to be able to apply. But also we are giving them the tools to make this easier to start, because the key concept here is how do we track energy consumption and so on. And we have this platform that's called Jord that is under development and will allow in the future to measure this in real time. So you can make decisions and you can see the impact. Every time that you make a new release on your software, on your product, you can go to this and say, okay, well, this is a score going up and down. I do it right or doing wrong. What make me making an increase of 20% on the energy consumption? What happened around it? And you can pinpoint that to a specific source code. So this is practically how we can in Globant take this as an opportunity and as a responsibility as well.
Santi, would you like to speak specifically to Jord, our platform?
Yeah, Jord is, as I mentioned, it's under development right now, but was applied to this media company. The important thing about Jord is that it's not intrusive. We don't want to be someone that brings yet another tool to be deployed inside the infrastructure. So I am the IT department, I'm the CIO, and I need to, okay, another tool, really? I'm a developer on a team and say, you know what? Another process and I need to take it in consideration? No way. So we make this non-intrusive. So going a little technically, if I permit, we take Docker images. So Docker is like a container that you put all your digital product there and you can move around and you can take measures around that. So it's like a black box approach, similar to what security does. So now the security team goes and plug the magic tools and say, okay, this is what is wrong. We do a similar approach, but taking apart the part that this is wrong. We say, you know what, this is an opportunity. We are seeing that you, in the last commit that you made and the last release, we see an increase on performance, and it will make your end users to leave the page because it loaded, instead of taking 2 seconds, now taking 10 seconds. And you can go back and see, oh, I see that. So hopefully we'll be releasing mid-2022. And eventually we want this to be open so everyone can use it and get a graph of what are how sustainable is their web page or their products.
Thanks for that. Thank you, Santi, for expounding a little bit on our product. We're excited and eager to continue its progress. So we are now ready for Q&A. If you'll allow us, I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to pull up your questions and begin that process. So here's the first question, Santi, from Alejandro. Hi guys, great topic and great presentation. I'd like to know if there is visibility regarding government environmental agencies like the EPA, if they're going to be looking into this topic and create regulations for companies to follow as part of the overall emissions regulations that are coming. Thank you.
Regulations, it's a complicated topic. Nowadays, there is no regulation whatsoever in terms of emissions. So there's no penalty. But we have seen a trend with Biden administration and the new Green Deal and also in Europe. So even though there's no actual regulation for what we're talking about, the digital carbon footprint, we believe that in no further future, there are going to be a strong regulation about emissions in general. So companies are going to have a restriction on the amount of CO2 that they can emit because of their business. So when that happens, there are companies that are already getting ahead of them. They are voluntarily disclosing their carbon emissions to different projects. Carbon Disclosure Project, CDP, for example, is one of them. So there are not yet regulation coming, actual regulation at the moment, but we encourage many companies to start having this exercise, because it's something that did not happen overnight. It's not that you start measuring it first and then you start taking action, and they take some time, because it's not just technical, it's also cultural change.
Thank you for that, Santi. Here's another one. And there's sort of there's sort of two here that are related. One is, I think the first challenge is, where to start. From your perspective, company-wise, what is the best way to kick off this kind of initiative? Then there's another question that says, how can I know my footprint? So maybe we can talk about how to start.
Yeah, where to start? As a company, the first thing is to have a department inside the company that take about the sustainability as a whole. Probably many companies already have, and start setting goals. And the next step immediately is to start having a baseline. We need to measure, right? To measure which is our carbon footprint as a company. So there's scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 3, which depends on where you are using that to produce or is direct impact of your production. So to put a program in place, to start measuring, and once you measure, to start defining goals to achieve over time. This kind of disclosure is doing annually, but it's important that identify inside the company as well champions that will foster this change. And regarding how I can know my footprint, it depends on the context, but let's say as a company, there are already protocols, there are already framework of working, not just for these. I don't go into, even tools, I don't go into many details. As for myself, it's tricky. There are some pages that allows you to do an estimate, but it's hard to actually measure to the actual footprint, because to do that you need to put like a energy measure on your side of your house and start measuring that, measuring other stuff. So even if you take a cab, you need to track that. So my recommendation for individuals is to Google. There are some pages we can share that give you an estimate of your carbon annual footprint.
And thank you for that. Let's see here. So which market segments and industries and world regions are leading the demand of sustainable software, Santi?
This is a global issue. I have seen that there's no predominant region or market that is ahead of the other ones. I will say, it's a personal opinion, that France, in particular in Europe, is the most advanced in terms of engineering. This issue has been on the academic for a long time. There's a lot of papers back to 2008, but in terms of engineering tools and actions to be used, I would say that there's not that much. So either I will say the Green Soul Foundation, which is composed for all over the world, and in particular France, I will say it's the most advanced in terms of tool. But in terms of awareness, I would say that the United States and Europe are the most advanced in terms of policies and regulations.
Excellent. Let's see how we're doing on time. We're doing pretty good on time. Here's a couple more. Do you consider the carbon footprint reductions will be eventually tracked as part of the CI/CD pipeline?
Yeah, that's a very good one. We envision this to be incorporated. CI/CD is continuous integration, continuous delivery. Basically, is that you are allowed to submit source code and be immediate, almost in real time, be on production. So you put on the hand of your clients or the users. We envision this to be fully automatic. So it's another metric that you track on there. So you can complement your development process. So on the long run, we are seeing this as part of that process as well.
Great, great. This is the last question, I think, but I'll look again after we answer this one. So you mentioned your platform, Jord, is going to be ready mid-2022. Are there other ways that Globant can help companies right now to start working on digital sobriety, even without this platform being, open to the public public?
Sure. I mean, just to be clear on this, JORC is just a tool. Digital sobriety is the framework, the way of doing things. We as Globant are building this tool because we see value for our teams to use the tool, but it's not restricted to the tool. We currently have teams that already are working on this way of doing things on digital sobriety and apply these techniques. They will benefit from the tool, but what about if the client doesn't want to or doesn't have the possibility to include this tool because of regulation? They are not limited to the tool. This is a set of expertise, right? That is applied as a service as well. You can either have the tool, which is going to have you giving you some information, but you can act on that. But to act on that, you need the skills and the people, the engineers have the expertise to apply this. So it's two separate things that come together, but it can be used independently. So, but to the answer, we are actually already doing this as a service with some of our clients I mentioned before.
Excellent. Are there any other questions, anyone? I think we've got a couple more minutes. If not, we may be concluding. Okay, thank you very much. Ariel, would you like to wrap us up?
Yes, Kitty, Santiago, also presentation. I think that the topic is right on the point. It's something that everybody needs to be aware of and start to work as soon as possible. I think that it was a great collaboration from Globant in order to share this topic with us. Well, thanks a lot. And well, thanks everybody for attending this webinar. We have upcoming webinars in our webpage that you can visit and basically register. Thanks a lot and enjoy the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.